Yeah, that's when I moved back to the ranch here, I had to figure that out with my dad, where it was just way better to just beg forgiveness than
Mhm.
wait and see, like, let's formulate a game plan and do all this. Like, no, just do it. And then if he's not happy about it, he'll let you know.
Yeah, my mom always says my dad's whole thing is anything worth doing is worth overdoing. So everything at our place is like it's not just like let's wait and just see and we'll see how this works. It's like no, we're doing it all right now. Like dad, when we went to Arizona for Art of the Cowgirl, my mom actually went with us, which is like the first time ever that she left dad home alone to take care of all the horses and everything by himself. And like the waters that my mom and dad have been freezing for the last like 10 years, like when it gets cold. And so mom's out chopping ice every single day. Dad was there not even 12 hours and it was cold, and he had already ordered new waters and had them all installed pretty much by the time mom got there. And mom was like, that's all I had to do was leave for like 12 hours and all of the problems got fixed. I was like, yeah, well.
That's great.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's what they say though. Women marry guys like their dad. So does your husband and your dad get along pretty well?
Oh yeah. Yep, very well. Yeah, they're kind of a dynamic duo when they get going on a project because he's a doer. Like he really, like when he puts his mind to doing something, it's gonna get done really well and really fast. So when dad's like, I think we should do this, and then all of a sudden Gabe's got it done, and dad's like, oh, perfect, there we go. So you have to be really careful about what you say you want done around the two of them because it happens pretty fast.
Yeah.
Like right now, Gabe's out building like right here at the OW, everything, all the corrals and everything are historic. So everything has to be wood. Like you can't really use pipe corrals or anything like that. So our corral system that we had before was really terrible. And so Gabe just decided 2 days ago that he was going to build an entire wood lead up to set our silencer chute up with. And so in the last like day, we've pounded like 100 posts and hung a 5-rail fence. Like, I mean, like this is like a week-long undertaking, and we got it done in like 2 days because we have to have it done by Friday when we need it. So Gabe's like, let's get it done right now so that we can have it by Friday.
Dang.
That's awesome.
So what does that mean? Is that some sort of like designation, kind of like how there's like federal wildlife areas, like having a historic area on the ranch?
Yeah, it's in the National Register of Historic Places. So like the whole headquarters, like right where we live, all the buildings they're under that. So they only like, you can get away with some things like now they'll let you use screws instead of like wood pegs, which is nice. And then like all the corrals have to be wood, but we did use pressure treated wood. So that's nice. But a lot of that stuff, you just kind of have to be like, well, we need to kind of adjust depending on, we still use all the things. So it can't just be like 100% historic landmark because we use all the corrals every day. We use the barn every day. We use the cookhouse every day. So even though it was built in like 1875, we still have to use it. So.
Gotcha. And so I guess did that just happen, or was there a benefit of getting that historic designation, or why is it like that now?
I think the landowner it's been like that for a long time, but I think the landowner gets tax breaks from it. But
okay. That makes sense.
But yeah. It is, I mean, I think that's the benefit of it, but it also like the place itself, like I think up until we got here, a lot of that was just kind of a hindrance because it was like, well, we can't touch anything because it's historic. And so they just didn't really try to upgrade it because it wasn't that easy to upgrade it. But when we got here, we went through and we did a lot of upkeep and changing things and cleaning up and, like rebuilding a lot of fence, corrals, and all sorts of things.
Yeah. Just needed some doers working there.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
Not some wait and see people. Too. Yeah. I got you.
Really good crew.
Good.
Yeah. Yeah. You guys definitely have a crew of doers. Like I was watching the kids, even when you guys were at the Pro-Am. It's impressive. You have like a whole tribe of little working help there. So, So did you end up sending Romel out with Gabe this morning?
Yeah. Feed? Yep. She's fencing.
How old is she?
She's 1.5 years.
Wow. So in a way, do you feel like you're watching your own childhood a little bit in her?
Oh yeah,
Because you had a pretty punchy childhood, right?
they're with me all along, like helping mom and
Okay.
her older sibling. She's, they help so much with her, and I'm so lucky to have them to, help me babysit to where I can go ride or, and they'll take her and she loves going with them and they teach her so much, and it's cool to have that and be able to do the horse thing with them too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the thing, and it probably becomes like normal life to you, but to other people, and I even could see that clearly, there's a distinct like sense of responsibility that especially your kids, but ranch kids have that you do not see in other kids. Like sometimes maybe like a wealthy person's kid, if they give him a bunch of responsibility and he's around like an operation or I don't know, just some kid that works hard,
Mhm.
they have more of a sense of responsibility, but not in the same way that ranch kids do. It's
No.
distinctly impressive. They're like little adults, and
Yeah.
they tend to be more hardworking and seem to be more responsible than most adults.
Oh man. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and we talk about that all the time. Like our kids, we forget sometimes because we're around them so much, and you'll be like, "Hey, Paisley, go saddle your horse and go gather Lower Horse Creek and tell us how many cows you come back with." And she's like, "Okay, sounds good," and off she goes. And she's 13. Or Jack and Hattie, the same thing. We can be like, okay, ride off that way and wait on that ridge and wait till you see somebody. And they're like, okay, sounds good. And off they go. And they don't even think about it. They're just like, yep, that's what we do. And like the little things too, like, all three kids know how to drive a manual and they all know how to drive a feed truck. They know how to feed cows. They know how to feed horses. They know how to do all those things that are specific to our lifestyle, but also it's amazing because so Paisley's homeschooled, our oldest, and she chose to homeschool this year because she was like, I want to ride. That's what I want to do. So she stays home with us and she rides and does her homeschool here at the ranch. And the other two go to town during the week and go to school. And they, it's amazing seeing the difference between like all the kids that they go to school with and then them, and like the little things that they don't realize that they have such a firm grasp on, like doing dishes, which seems like such a trivial thing, but like how many 8-year-olds know how to do dishes? Not that many, or know how to clean a cast iron pan, and I can come in and be like, Jack, make sure the dishes are all done and make sure everything's put away. And he'll have it done, no problem. Don't even have to think twice about it, but I think that responsibility just really comes from having all the animals depend on us for everything that we do too, and holding them responsible. It's the same thing. Gabe always says too, and Dad, that it translates over. Kids and horses are the exact same, and how you treat them and the responsibility you give them and the discipline, that's what creates that response to, them wanting to please you and them wanting to do right, but it's all about how you lead up to that, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, and it seems like it leaves kids with and same with horses, such a secure feeling about
Yeah.
themselves that,
Mm-hmm.
even if you don't know what you want to be when you grow up, you at least know that you can work and you can
Yeah.
talk to adults and you can correspond with other people and you have this real sense of being and a real security. And that
Mm-hmm.
really comes through is that comfortability in oneself when kids
Yeah.
are raised like that.
Yep. And that's too like,
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Reata.
oh no, I was just gonna say the translation too, like between like Gabe's family, like I know you guys interviewed Sky, and like the Clark family is wild, like they're on a whole nother level. But like the combination of the two, it's really interesting to see it like in the works of how I was raised and how Gabe was raised, and then how how we come together for the kids and everything. It's pretty cool.
So with the older kids, sorry, Ben, with the older kids, did you, obviously you said they just kind of aligned. Did they, when you and Gabe started dating, did you feel like they already kind of had that sense of responsibility and independence? Obviously they were a lot younger, but Gabe was starting to instill that in them, or was that something like you and Gabe had to have the conversation about?
No. They were probably almost more independent before Gabe and I got together, as far as like, and their mom, like we get along really good with their mom and everything. Like all that is great. Like we have a good relationship with them. But,
Good.
that's hard on kids. Like divorce is hard on kids, and they are very resilient. It's incredible. But I definitely, being on the ranch and having that lifestyle to kind of back them up and be like, okay, things are different now. This is how things are going to change. And the kids were kind of like, okay, yep, sounds good. And they rolled on. And but they, the independence, they're extremely independent kids. And it is alarming for some people, I think, to, how we do things on certain things. As far as, there's not a lot of people that would send their kids over, to be like, go catch your horse and go saddle them and go do this and, figure out how to get them saddled, like that's our thing with Jack right now. Cause he's the littlest and he's only 9, and he's got a pretty big horse now, and he's got to figure out how to do it on his own. So he's getting pretty good about it. And, whether doing it on your own, that might entail asking for help. And that's what something is hard for, it's hard for kids. Sometimes they'll just break down and be like, I can't do it, but you can do it, but you might have to ask for help in order for you to be able to do it. And that's a thing that's, that is an option. So trying to instill that in them and get it to where they feel that independence still, but they feel like they're successful on their own also. So it's a hard balance sometimes.
Sure. Yeah, I can. It's funny you see, you say like they were maybe even more independent. I could see maybe having just a little bit of a mother hen influence on them could be positive too,
Yeah.
But
especially,
that's
balance of their, like with their mom and everything, like their mom's not really into the horses as much, which is, it's fine, but so having that double maternal thing definitely has helped them, as far as like having me there to help them with the horse thing and be able to be like, okay, like this is, because Gabe's super, I mean, you guys listen to Sky. Some of the stories are just wild from the Clarks, but they Gabe and all of his siblings were raised so independent, like they're on their own, often, like obviously they have a really great mother, but the things that they would do, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine. But having me there to kind of be like, well, you know what, let's do this. Let's do a little bit more groundwork. Let's get this.
Yeah.
Let's make sure they're good before you get on.
Yeah. Not John Wayne, everything in life.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. That's funny.
Well, Reata, it's remarkable though, that it's a testament to how you were raised, I think. And I'd like to hear your thoughts on it, but what was the transition like for you to go from being a single woman to being not only a wife, but also a mother of children right away, or in that position? Mm-hmm. Was that a big transition for you?
It was, but at the same time, it was, the kids are so easy and they're so great, and they were raised so well up until the point that I got in the picture, that it really wasn't that big of a deal, because Gabe and I were very compatible. As soon as Gabe and I first got together, it was easy. It was, we kind of had the same agenda. We were on the same path. And so we kind of just fell into place, and everything kind of took off. And, and I mean, it just kind of happened. And I think a lot of that is a testament to my mom, and having a good mom that was so there in so many perfect ways. And, my mom is the toughest person I know by far. I mean, there is very few women that would be married to somebody that is gone 9 months out of the year and stay home and feed cows and feed horses and raise 3 kids by herself and take care of a ranch and do all those other things. There's very few people that could do that. And my mom is one of the few. And, I think having that strong influence definitely made it easy. And don't get me wrong, when I had to tell my mom and dad that I was dating a guy with 3 kids and was recently divorced, that wasn't the most fun. I was a little nervous about that. But my dad knew Gabe, and once we got together, then and my mom met him, it was they loved him, and it was like, okay, yeah. And the kids were, my mom loves kids. And so as soon as she met the kids, she was like, okay, no, this is a good situation. It might not sound good or look good on paper, but it is a good situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense to me. When Ben asked that question, I thought, well, I haven't talked to Reata a ton, but just a little bit we've gotten to talk to your mom, and, meeting her in person, I'm like, wow, that woman is one of the most like maternal, nurturing people I've ever met. And I haven't even spent that much time around her, but it just kind of radiates from her. So, even though I'm sure it was a transition, like you alluded to, you had really good influences on kind of how to handle that already. Right. Cause gosh, it's not like Gabe's gone all the time. Like, you didn't inherit necessarily the extreme that your mom has dealt with the last however many years.
Yeah, thank goodness. That's a tough thing. I mean, we talk about that a lot. I was raised with, that's just how it is. That's dad's on the road. It's just what you do. And of course I missed him, but it was just how it was. It's what I always knew. So it just wasn't, it wasn't that hard for me growing up. It really wasn't. And it's not a pity party, because it was just what we were used to. We'd go see him when we could. And when, then he'd come home, and it was great when he came home, and that was just the way it went. But my mom, she influenced a lot of my horsemanship and stuff, more than my mom and my Aunt Mindy. I mean, obviously my dad is the biggest horsemanship influence in my life, but my mom and my Aunt Mindy really, like when I was really little, they were the ones that got me going. And they're the ones that always went out and caught my pony for me so I could trot around and, do the deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think most people from the outside looking in, obviously your dad, everyone knows who he is. And so they would think that someone, successful like that, will probably his daughter. Yeah, she would ride horses, but they would probably think you could do whatever you wanted to do though as well. Mm-hmm. So did you feel like you had a choice to ride horses or go do something else? Or did you feel like that was just that was also just the way it was? Like you were going to ride horses and get good at it?
It's a little bit of both, because I obviously loved it from the get-go. So I already knew that was what I wanted to do. But, when I was in high school, I played basketball and was pretty serious about basketball. And I didn't ride pretty much the whole time I played basketball. And then I got hurt my junior year playing basketball. And I just was like, I realized how unimportant it really was to me, because I was hurt enough that I couldn't play basketball, but I could ride. So I kind of started focusing more on that. And I'd already focused on it a lot, but I kind of switched my intentions a little bit and was like, all right, well, I guess I'm going to put more effort into this now. And I did that. And then all of a sudden I went, oh, that's completely unimportant. I don't want to do that. And I went to riding a lot more. And then, that just kind of, it fell into place. And that's how with what I wanted to do. And, and when I committed to going to Montana State, I had zero intentions of teaching, or, I boarded my horses the first 6 months I was there, and I would get done with class and go ride. And that was I just ride for myself. And then when I got hired to teach for MSU, that really, I was I can't believe, like looking back on that, like, I can't believe I did that, because like the thought of like, okay, I've never taught, like I've taught in the clinics and helped dad with stuff, helped dad with people, here and there, and helped him in that, but not like all right, here, like looking back, if hindsight's 2020, because it was like, okay, here's 20 kids that have never started a colt before. Here's 20 unhalter broke colts. Have at it. And I was like, yeah, I got it for sure. I got it. And it worked out. I did it. And I had to halter break every single one of them the first year, because like, I think 2 of the 20 were halter broke. So I was like, well, so every day I'd go run them in the round pen, and I'd rope every single one horseback and halter them and hand them off to a kid that had no idea what they were getting on the end of the lead rope, and then try to teach them groundwork, and then try to teach them all this stuff. And I mean, looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, that is so terrifying to think about, but it worked out great. It worked out good. And my foundation from, my dad and starting colts with him, it just was like, this is what we do and this is how we do it. So all in, this is what we do. And all the kids did great. And I only had, of the 5 years I taught there, I think I only had like 3 kids ever get bucked off. And that was, that's pretty good odds. 20 horses a year for that long and not having that many casualties is pretty impressive for that situation. It's not like you've got people that are starting colts or have experience riding. It's literally green as grass, never started a colt before, maybe rode a broke horse for a little while, but not much. And that once I did that at MSU, and that really set me up as far as like, okay, I'm 100% positive this is what I want to do. I know this is what my life is going to be, so I got a marketing degree, and then I knew that would help me with the horse stuff. And I taught the equine marketing classes at MSU for, selling all those horses that we started. And then after that, it kind of was just like, well, I'm just going to use what I know and on we go.
Yeah. So I'm really glad you brought that up because, that was something I wanted to get into. So we had one of our former guests on here is a guy named Gene Armstrong. And he basically taught the colt starting classes at a couple different colleges in California. I know Feather River was one of them and a couple other places, but it was fun to talk to him because he described it as a very unique situation, right? Because sometimes there's colt startings, right, where it's like maybe a guy comes in and he even has a crew or whatever, and it's like 2 or 3 weeks and then get them going and then you leave. Or it's like you're going to ride a horse for 2 or 3 years and then sell it. But you have like kind of an interesting timeline. I don't know yours exactly, but it was like 9 months. But then, yeah, you have all these, like you said, you have a lot of manpower, but not a lot of skilled labor, so to speak. And so, can you talk about, we don't need to get in the weeds on horsemanship, but just like a kind of a general approach, like where you like, all right, the first 6 weeks, we're just going to get these things as gentle as possible just to keep everyone alive, or however you approached it. Cause I'd be curious to hear that. Cause it is kind of a unique colt starting situation where you're not necessarily rushed, but you do have a timeline still and you're kind of handicapped by all the help you have.
Yeah. And it was, I always say that with our kids, just circling back to that, kids are incredible with animals because they have, they're not ignorant, but they're not threatening. They're no threat to the animal. So, a lot of times our kids will get along with horses that if you or I walked up to them, the horse would be blowing sideways at them, but the kids can go out and just touch them, no big deal. And then just waller up the side of them, get on and go, and they don't even think twice about it. It was kind of that same situation there at MSU because a lot of those kids, what I found was the kids that had a little bit of prior experience and a little bit of knowledge, they were actually worse off than the ones that had no knowledge and were a clean slate. Because all I had to do was just teach them the right thing and teach them what to do in a certain situation. And they were like, got it. But a lot of those, how I described it was it's kind of like teaching. So it's like teaching a language, but you're trying to teach somebody that doesn't know the language. And then they have to teach somebody else the language while they're learning the language, which is the thought of that, what a disaster. But
yeah,
they, it's incredible. The kids that came through there, and, I had everybody from football players at MSU to vet students to English majors. Everything, because it's an elective. So a lot of those kids, and it was a small elective too. They didn't get a lot of credit for it, but it is incredible the time that they would put into those horses outside of class time. We only met 2 days a week for 2 hours, and they would ride their horses every single day for several hours a day. It was a full-time job for all those students. So they weeded themselves out pretty quick. The ones that wanted to put the time in, they definitely put the time in and they got out of it a lot. But they the ones that didn't put the time in and were kind of like, man, it's not super important to me. They ended up, a lot of those kids ended up not getting quite as much out of it, even though in the end they all got a lot out of it. But it was an interesting situation, especially being in a college situation where it's not like a clinic where anybody that signs up, they're paying the money directly, so they're going to get out of it what they want to get out of it. In this situation, it's an elective, so it's super easy for them if they're like, oh, this got a little hard, I'll just take a withdrawal, and get out of it. And I had a couple of those for sure, but I wasn't ever worried about it because it was like, if you're not wanting to put the time in, I'm not going to put my time into you. So that's fine. No big deal. Move on. But, those horses, and a lot of those horses that went on to do, they went on to do a lot of great things. As far as I know, a lot of the people, I see them in Dad's clinics to this day still, like the people that will show up and be like, oh, do you remember this horse? I bought him, 10 years ago at MSU. And it's like, oh, wow, cool. That's great to see. But there's, having that opportunity to go out there and get my feet wet teaching as well as be going to school. I was taking 18 credits. So taking 18 credits and then having to go teach every day, we'd go in the off hours and everything. And it was a lot to take on, but it got to where it was so rewarding seeing all these kids, kids, I say kids, but a lot of them were older than me at the time. But seeing all these kids and students, how much they gained and how it set them up on their path for what they want to do in life, and there's a lot, I'm not going to mention any of them because some of them I'm not super proud of. But I will say that I definitely helped them get their feet wet in it. And I'll tell you after.
Okay. Sure. So even though it's an elective class, were some of these people studying that to go on and become like professional horse trainers later on?
Yeah, a lot of them have done, have done pretty well for themselves. And it's incredible because a lot of them I go, holy cow, your first experience even being on a horse was in my Colt starting class. And now it's incredible that then you can be like, wow, you're doing it. You're out there making a living doing this. That's pretty incredible that, and part of me's proud and part of me's I don't know. I'm very much so of the mentality like my dad where I never think I'm qualified. I'm very I have so much to learn. And I always, and when, my dad always says, when you are no longer in a learning frame of mind and a learning state of mind, you shouldn't be doing what you're doing. And that's where, I ride with my dad whenever I get a chance to. And I feel so dumb whenever I do and that I don't know anything. And I love that because it's I always have somewhere to go and it's more to learn. And about the littlest things, the day that I feel like I can't gain any knowledge from my mentor is the day that I should find a new career. And that's, a lot of people need to remember that too, that, that loyalty and that being pure to what you know and to the people that have gotten you to where you're at, that's what makes you, that's what allows you to continue to learn and continue to gain that knowledge. And just the other day when Dad was home, he goes, I was bridling a colt and I just was putting a bridle on the way I've done it my whole life since Dad taught me when I was little. And I went to do it and Dad goes, hey, you're doing that wrong. And I went, what? What do you mean I'm doing it wrong? And he's like, let me show you a way easier way to do this. And I'm like, okay. So he shows me and I was like, that would have been really cool, Dad, if you'd have shown that to me 15 years ago. And he's like, well, I just thought you knew. And I'm like, no, you taught me this. And he goes, well, sometimes I just change how I do things. I'm like, oh, good. Well, thanks, Dad. But just that right there, the fact that he's still learning and figuring things out on certain horses, that right there, it's how do you, I know that my dad would have given anything to ride one more time with Ray Hunt. And he would have given anything. If Ray said, show up, I need your help, Dad would have been there in the drop of a hat, if just for that opportunity to learn something, and that's what for me, that drives me in my horsemanship, and it drives Gabe, and it drives our kids. It drives everybody. Just that wanting that little bit more knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in light of that, when you went to MSU, I take it you didn't go there to teach in the beginning. So how did that come about that you became the teacher of this class?
Well, they so a few years prior, Wade Black actually was teaching the class, and then he had left. He was getting his master's at MSU, and he left, and then the class kind of went by the wayside. It was, they had a few instructors come in and kind of do it, but they had other things going on, and so it just was kind of falling apart. And I obviously was going to school there. And a gal by the name of Jan Bowman, who she is no longer at MSU, but she's retired, but she had helped Wade with his master's program. She knew that I was going there, and she called me and just said, "Hey, I don't know if you'd be interested in this, but I think you would do great at it." And I was like, "Oh man, I don't know." And Shannon Moreau actually also was a big part of it. He was the head of the equine program at MSU, and he was an amazing vet and has done a lot in his life. And he was kind of my main guide after I started. It was kind of, and I was like, I don't know, I got to talk to my dad. So I talked to my dad about it. I was like, what do you think? Do you think I can do it? And Dad was like, well, I mean, it might be a lot, but you might as well try it and see. And he even admits too that like he talked to my mom about it and was like, that's going to be a lot. I hope she's ready for this. And, and I don't know. I was all for it though. I was like, I got it. I can do this. 100% I can do this. And so I just started, and, I held tryouts for the class. And it's funny because a couple of days ago I was cleaning out my horse trailer and I found a stack of my old syllabi from MSU. And it's pretty funny reading it. Like, it's great. Like I saved them because I was like, that's actually super good. Like, kind of a good basis for this. But, I had to do all of it as far as writing the curriculum. And cause for a college situation, it's not just like a clinic where you're just like spewing knowledge. You have to have it written down for the college. So I had to go through, I obviously used my dad's groundwork book, which that was my first day of class. I gave every kid a groundwork book and a groundwork DVD and a snaffle bit DVD and a first ride. And they had to watch all of them. And then we would have like viewing parties and we'd all sit down and watch them. And I would base my entire class around the video and, talking about it and breaking it down and having them ask questions about it. And then we were also super lucky. Dad would come every year and do a horsemanship deal with all the kids in the Colt class. And that was great. And, it was humbling for him to come and help me and show the areas that I needed to improve on too. And in teaching everybody too. And that's what was cool, is having him be able to tell me, be like, okay, you need to have these guys do this better. Like, you need to focus more on this. And by them doing that, by him helping me help them, it helped me in my horsemanship a lot. And with my personal horses that I was working on at the time also. So it was, beneficial for all parties.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause a lot of people who are pretty handy starting colts, they could go their whole lives and not ever have to sit down and like write it out like you just described with the syllabus, right? It's like, well, first I do this and this. And obviously it's like dynamic. It's not like, I don't know, plumbing a house or something. And so you got to be able to change course. But that little exercise in itself, like makes you think about it so much more. And having to teach people, I'm sure after a couple of years of doing that, you got a lot out of it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I was always adjusting too, changing my curriculum and how it, how we moved and the different things that we worked on. And we would always, at the end of the year, Fralix would send, a bunch of colts after. We'd have a colt sale in April, and then I'd have a month of classes left. So I'd have to figure out what to do for a month. So Lance would send 20 head of colts, and we would start them for him and in the month. And it was really cool because that was their final. That was the students' final. It was that they had another colt to start and they had a month to do it. And most of the time, the amount that they got done in the 8 months that they spent on their colt before, they would already be far beyond that on their second colt within 30 days. And that was
That's
the coolest
awesome.
thing to see. It was, and obviously the Freylet colts were super gentle and they were really good minded, and it was perfect for that situation because it wasn't like it was going to be like a panther. It was like, okay, these are all pretty gentle, but they're not halter broke. They've not been touched. They've not been messed with. So everything you put in them, you are responsible for, and it has your stamp on it. So figure out how to make them nice. And within 2 weeks, they would be on them, loping circles, doing everything that it took them maybe 6 months to get on their first colt. So it was really cool having that opportunity to be able to do that. And then, to actually show them like, see, this is the work you put in the work on the first one. And now you're seeing what you learned.
Yeah, absolutely. So changing gears a little bit, you mentioned you decided to study marketing at MSU. And obviously you guys now, you have Clark horses, right? Is kind of what you branded as. And then you guys breed some horses and obviously buy horses, ride them and sell them. You mentioned Art of the Cowgirl. And from what I can see, at least more than I've ever accomplished in terms of like marketing horses and selling horses, I haven't really gotten into that very much. But, Ben and I are sitting here as two aspiring entrepreneurs in the horse world. If someone was getting into horses right now, say someone just left MSU, for example, and they took your class and they're like, I'm going to have a go of it. And, maybe I'm going to take some outside horses and keep one or two back to sell them. I would be really curious to get your thoughts on marketing horses and maybe even like some mistakes you maybe see people make. Because I would categorize you, I know you're very humble, but I would categorize you as a success in that standpoint. Like, I think you're very good at demonstrating your horses and being ethical about it in the same way. You're not trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. But I would be curious your thoughts on what it takes to do a good job marketing your horses and maybe some mistakes you see people make, like when you go to these sales or just, on Facebook or Instagram in general.
Yeah, the horse selling market it's a tough business to be in because you can really easily get labeled a horse trader, which is not really the best thing to be labeled as. And
Yep.
we've worked really hard to stay away from that. We don't trade horses. We don't go buy them and then just flip them for a higher profit immediately. We really try to focus on making sure that the product we're putting out there has not only our name on it, but our product, as far as, we're putting the time into them. We're putting the hours, we're putting the foundation in them. And, we might go buy a 4-year-old at a sale somewhere, but we take them right home and we get right down to business. We do all of our groundwork. We get them solid on that. And above all else, you get them gentle because at the end of the day, handy is not what people are after. You have to get them gentle. And we try hard to get our horses handy also, but there is a fine line between, and we've all heard people say like, oh, I like my horse I like them a little spicy so that they, have that little bit of zip to them. And that's not good if you are selling horses to the public because that little bit of zip is what gets Carol bucked off. And that's what we always say. That's our thing with our kids too. Cause like our kids are, the horses that they're selling, they're their horses. Like we'll help them, but the kids are riding them. They're the ones doing it. We're not sticking our kids on a horse at a sale and being like, go sell this horse for us. The kids are marketing and selling their own horses and they are reaping the benefits from it. But we always tell them, and our kids are pretty handy. So, Hattie might go out here and she's on her horse riding around. She'll be like, watch this. And she'll go do it. And I go, that's great. But can Carol do it? We always ask that. And Carol's just a general name, and not implying to anybody, but a lot of the time that's who's going to show up to buy your horse. And if Carol can't get on them off the fence when they're 10 inches away from the fence, then it means you probably should go back to the drawing board and start over and do it again, get it better. And that's where we use that for everything. And like, the marketing and selling of horses right now, especially with the horse market being so high, which it's amazing. It's a great deal for us. But for us, it's not a matter of just buying a horse and flipping it and making money on it. It's a matter of being able to take a horse that we see potential in, put the time into him and the foundation that, from dad and, of learning everything that we've spent our entire lives learning and putting it into these horses and then selling them to somebody that will appreciate the foundation that we've put into them. And that's something that we really focus on. And I think that like the horse world in general, people get their horses dull, but they don't get them gentle. And there's a huge difference between those two things. And a lot of times you see it when you go to sales and you go to, we go to like Billings horse sale a lot. And, there's a lot of horses that go through there. Like we'll sit through 600 horses and there's a lot of horses that are dull and that will tolerate a lot. But at the end of the day, it's not gentle. That's the difference. And that's what people aren't capable of differentiating between the two. They might see a horse that you can put a tarp over its head and ride around. Great. But, if your kid accidentally gets rim fired, is that horse going to get them out of trouble or is it going to buck them off and head for the hills? There's a difference. And that preparation that we put into our horses, that really, the time that we put into that, that's what sets our horses apart, that we can back them up. And we do back them up. We back all of our horses up that we sell. We guarantee what we're selling. We know what the horse is. And that's also why I have taken, Gabe's not into social media at all. So I kind of do all of that, but that's our insurance. We post everything we do on Facebook and Instagram because that's insurance. If someone buys a horse and they take him home and they say, well, I can't get him to do this. And I say, well, go back and look on Instagram or go look at this video or I'll send him a video of it, of that horse doing that exact thing. And that right there that's our, like I said, it's insurance. It shows what the horse is capable of, what the horse knows, what we've done with it, and putting it all out there for him to see so that at the end of the day, there's no secrets. It's not like, we didn't have to go through, like recently I posted a video of Gabe on that little gray and white paint pony of our daughter's that we just got her, and dad's doing a whole video on the Buck channel for it. And it's going to be really cool. But that pony came with a lot of baggage and I'm not going to lie to anybody and be like, oh, she's gentle for the whole family. Totally good. Ready to go. Obviously whoever she ends up getting sold to way down the road, like we're going to hang on to her for a long time, but eventually she might get sold when she's ready to be sold. But I'm not going to lie about what she started out as because that's her. That's what it is. And there's a lot of couch quarterbacks that see those posts and, all the crazy horse people show up on Instagram and start posting on those things. And I just don't respond and I just delete their comment.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to laugh at that. But
yeah,
I mean, really, that is a good form of insurance, like in this day of social media, this day and age, because, the horse world is the worst about gossip too. So if something did happen to one of the people you sold a horse to, like the bad, report can get around so quickly, and then people don't really know you enough. Whereas if you are that transparent and everybody's always got eyes on what you're doing, then some thing they might hear from somebody from, the third or fourth person, they're going to be like, no, I don't think that's true. Like I see these guys ride all the time. I'm like, yeah. I trust what I see there a lot more than some rumor that comes from somewhere else. Exactly. And you kind of have to. It seems like a good idea. Like the people that aren't very transparent, they're the ones that the rumors stick to a lot more. And then half the time you get to know them and you're like, oh, what I heard about you isn't true at all. Right. Or it might be. But typically it's not. But the people that aren't very transparent about what they do, especially in the horse world, all the rumors you hear about them, you kind of think they're true unless something is there to prove you otherwise.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. And that's, our kind of mentality on a lot of things is like, and to us, my mentor, Gabe, with his mentors, like we're very transparent about like who we admire and who we try to emulate and who our horsemanship is based on. And it's, we're super pure with that. And we always say, like, especially in today's world where there's so many different options as far as like which avenue you go down with your horsemanship and with the horse industry, if you wouldn't do it in front of your mentor, you probably shouldn't be doing it. And that's something that goes for a lot of things.
Yeah. That's good advice. I think my parents told me that before I went to college. They're like, if you wouldn't do it in front of us, don't do it.
Exactly. And that's where, when I went to college, I was a pretty good kid. I didn't get in trouble. I never got in trouble. I never did anything. And that was, but I was also super transparent with my parents, with everything that I always did. And that's, with our kids too. It's the same thing. We encourage them to be transparent with us about what they want, what they're after, but also be aware that we might tell them no. And that's, and they're aware of it. And that's where, I think the horse industry, unfortunately, it's a tough world to be in because everybody thinks they can make a buck. And most of the time, the people that make money in the horse industry probably had money to begin with and from something else. It's not, as far as, it's not the most lucrative business to be in, but it's amazing how the relationships you can build with the different people, that's where you get rich, is the relationships. And being able to support those and being able, taking all the kids to Art of the Cowgirl. I mean, Mesa Pate's been one of my best friends my whole life. And, I'm so supportive of her and her event and everything that she's trying to do down there and taking the kids down there. We personally, like Gabe and I, we don't really like taking horses to sales or anything because we don't really feel like we need to. We raise horses and we raise colts and we don't really have to post them on social media because most of the time they sell before we even need to do that. But for the kids to get out there, that was our big thing this year. Is we wanted the kids to take their horses to Art of the Cowgirl so that they could have a chance to, to talk to people, to realize why it's important to do all these things, to be like, okay, this is the ground, like, they know the importance of doing their groundwork. They know, but at the end of the day, they only know as much as they can see. And when someone that doesn't know how to do groundwork takes a hold of your horse, it was a good experience for them, to have somebody that doesn't know any of this stuff take a hold of their horse at the sale and get on them and then go ride around. And, and that's the most stressful situation in the world, is seeing somebody that doesn't know get on your horse. You're just like, oh no. And it's funny watching the kids too, like in that situation, they're like, oh gosh, like this is so stressful. I'm like, yeah, I know it is. But if you've done your job and you've done a good job on your horses and you've prepared them for the life that they're going to lead, then you don't have anything to worry about. And that's what it was so good for them to see that and see that they had done a good job on it, So a little girl can go crawl on Hattie's pony at the sale and go lope circles on him and be completely fine and get along great. But I told her, I said, see, that's why we wanted you to work on that stuff, because that's the product. That's what you see. Because when you're selling horses, when they get them home, we always say too, when we sell a horse, because it never fails, you'll sell a horse to somebody and they'll be like, well, I got them home and they did this, or it took me a while to get them figured out to do this. It never fails. Every horse you ever sell. And we always say that would be like, just to put it in terms for them, that'd be like me taking somebody else's kids, swapping kids and saying, okay, your kids come live with me. And then having no understanding as far as like what their lifestyle was, how they did things, their routine, nothing. And just expecting those kids to fall into place without any trouble, any conflict, just expecting them to be like, yep, I know exactly where the dishes go. I know where your room is. I know when you want your room clean. I know what time we get up, all those things. Can you imagine taking somebody's kids and just expecting them to know? No, that would be impossible. Yeah. There's no way that would work. The kids would be like, I hate you. I don't want to live here. And they'd run away. So why do we expect horses to do that? Why do we expect horses to be okay with that? And that's where, and every time I've explained it to people that way and been like, can you imagine that? They're like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. I'm like, I know. So just, take that into consideration. When you get your new horse home, they're learning you and you're learning them. And that's a huge adjustment for both people and horse, and that's just how it goes. But making sure people understand that before they get a horse home is definitely important, because we don't want to sell a horse to somebody that it's not going to fit. I've had people show up and offer a lot of money for a horse and it not be a fit, and me be like, nope, I'm not selling you this horse. This isn't going to work. And then be like, well, you sure? Like, I'm ready to pay. I really like them. And I'm like, nope, I don't like this, because, and I always tell them, like, I'll help you find the horse that is going to fit you, or I'll figure it out for you. I'll help you out. But this one's not the one. And that in the long run creates more for you in your career than anything. You can sell one horse to somebody and have it not work out and have it ruin your whole career.
100%.
Yeah, man, because it is really frustrating when people they start using words like buttons, or does he know this or know that, and you feel like you're selling them a truck or something. Like it's like it has these built-in qualities that will be there. So that's really good advice. I haven't heard it put quite like that, but because it can be really frustrating, especially the more you study horsemanship in this way, like the further you go from that way of thinking, and then you run into somebody that's like, it's like they're buying a piece of equipment and you just want to shake them by the shoulders or just hang up and not talk to them. But it can be very difficult because you're like, they're nice folks, but you're like, how do you not understand that? Like, we're talking about a horse. We're not talking about a truck. So that's really good insight. But so when you are looking for new horses, I assume there's a lot of things you're looking for, but is there one very important thing that you have to see in a horse before you're going to buy it to be a potential prospect?
Well,
and you don't have to give away any of your trade secrets, but
no, but first impression is always like, that's a lot for me. My first impression, if I like a horse, odds are I like them and it's going to work. And Gabe's the same way. Like, we can have a lineup of horses in front of us and we'll be like, I like that one. And usually that's the one. And, I've very rarely been wrong about that. Like, I bought this gray and white pony off Facebook and I got her home and Gabe was like, what have you done? I was like, it'll be fine. But, that's one of few, but they're, most of the time first impression. And there's obviously, like, when you take a hold of a horse, you can tell a lot, as you all know. Like, when we go to a horse sale or something, like the only sale we really go to is like Billings livestock sale, and they sell a lot of horses and they sell a lot of really nice horses through there. But you can get prospects and you can get ones that you're like, all right, we typically, it's hard because you go to sales like that and you'll see like the fancy schmancy horses that are all slicked off and shiny. And, obviously there's a lot of people that are drawn to those because they're pretty and they look nice and they ride around good. But we look for the diamonds in the rough because a lot of times, someone that hasn't blanketed their horse or hasn't braided their manes and tails their whole life, and you'll see those and you'll be like, that one looks interesting. And, you can always tell a lot. You take your hand and run it in their girth area, and you'll have the ones that are like quivering and you couldn't drive a nail through them with a sledgehammer if you wanted to. But, you can tell a lot from that. You can tell a lot from, just running your hand on their back and, just the feel of one. You can pick up on those little details really easily. And, but then there's also the ones that when you go to touch them and they don't move, those are also just as bad. And, trying to first impression is a lot as far as like, we just recently bought a really nice gelding 3-year-old that we, of a catalog of 600 horses. That was the first one I picked out. And that's the one we bought. And we sat through all of the horses. And he was the only one. Wow. Of the whole catalog. I didn't see him, didn't look at him except for the picture. And I went, I like that horse. And sure enough, that's the one we took home. And, that happens more often than not, as far as once you kind of know what and also not buying a feeding project. If you're looking to resell a horse, do not buy a feeding project because you will never make your money back on it. It's one of those things. You put more time into feeding them than you do riding them. And that doesn't make good horses. It will in the long run. Eventually you'll have a really nice horse. But if you're looking for a horse to resell potentially, it's just never a good idea because it's, if the deal's good enough, maybe, but I try to stay away from those because you spend a lot of time going out and grading them and trying to get them to look good before you can even think about riding them. And that's tough. It's a tough spot to be in.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like buying high risk cattle and then you have to ride the cattle after they're fat.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like buying a bunch of leppy calves and being like, they'll make a lot of money. And then half of them die.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, while we're on this subject, I saw your post. Can you tell me about your, the story of the corgi horse that you had?
Oh my gosh. That was another one that that was not a good one.
Right. Again, qualifying statement. Most of them are good buys, right? But the corgi horse thing cracks me up every time I see it.
That was not good. But he was super nice horse. Like he was a really nice horse. He made up for it in a lot of ways. But we were looking for ranch horses because the first year we were here at the OW, it was a huge project. This whole place was a project, from rebuilding corrals to fences to just cleaning. Like I had to rip up shag carpet from the 70s out of the bunkhouse that had seen way too much use, like lots of projects like that. So we hired a crew of kids, like an intern kind of situation, but they were paid employees, but they came for the summer and they helped us with all of our projects. And to pay for their wage, we had the sale horses. So that's when we had the OW ranch horse sale. And so we bought all these, and this is when the horse market was pretty low. So you could go buy a really nice horse for under $3,000. So that's what we did. We went and bought a bunch of nice prospects under $3,000. And then we had the horse sale, and those horses paid for the summer help pretty much because they'd go out and ride and do their job. And then they made nice horses too, which that worked out great. And the ranch just kind of changed paths, and that's why we didn't do it anymore. But the first year we did it, it was great. Everything worked out awesome. The horses all turned out great. They all worked out in their homes. Like everything was perfect. But we were always on the hunt for these horses. So Gabe and I were buying horses right and left from people on Facebook, like backyard deals. We found a lot of horses really fast. 25 head we had to buy. So this girl that I knew on Facebook, I didn't really know her, but it was one of those deals where you know her on social media, but you wouldn't know her if you saw her in real life. She posted this horse for sale, and she had him at a 3/4 angle from the front, maybe a little off. And she posted a picture of him, and he's dapple gray, tall white stocking legs, big white blaze. I was like, oh, that horse is cool. And he was bred up really good. And I was like, holy cow, this is a nice horse. And I asked her what she wanted, and she was like, oh, I'd take $1,500. And I was like, what's wrong with him? Is he? And she was like, no, he's super gentle. He's really nice. The ranch that I'm working on is just kind of changing directions, and we don't need him. And I was like, perfect, I'll take him. So I take him. And then I had a couple people who were working for us go pick him up, and I don't remember where they picked him up, but they hauled him back to the ranch, and they went to unload him. And I walk out to meet him, and they're like, oh my gosh, Reata. And I was like, what? And they're like, wait till you see this thing. And I was like, is he that nice? And they're like, no, he's not. Oh no, what did I do? And so they unloaded him, and I was like, oh my gosh, this thing is a horse and a half long. Actually, he was so long. I've never seen a longer horse in my life. And his legs, he looked exactly like a wiener dog corgi. I was like, oh my gosh. She just angled that photo so perfectly for me not to even realize it, and at that point, what am I going to do? Send him back? No, he's paid for. I got his papers. I got everything. So we named him Slinky, and he stayed here for 2 years because I didn't have the heart to put him in the horse sale because I was so embarrassed about it. I was like, I can't sell this thing. He's not going in there. So he just sat around here for 2 years, And people would ride him and use him as a ranch horse. And they were like, is my saddle sitting right on this thing? And I'm like, yep, sure is. But he genuinely had like, I mean, his back was 1.5 feet too long. Like, it was incredible. I was like,
crazy.
and he was wild looking. And like, if you had a long pad and like kind of a longer skirted saddle on him, you wouldn't really notice it. And he was really nice. Like, mentally, he was a really nice horse. Physically, it was not good. It was not good. But I did end up selling him to a friend of ours, and he likes him and he gets along good with him. But I was pretty happy to see my mistake leave.
Sure. Yeah, too bad you don't have him. We'd get some photos for our next Deb Bennett episode.
Oh my god!
Put it up on the screen. All right, Deb, talk about this horse.
Yeah, it was bad. Yeah, no, and then, the horses, like, it's so easy to pick them apart, and be like, oh, he's a little crooked legged.
Mm-hmm.
No, this thing was perfect in every way except he was half a horse too long. That was his biggest thing.
Yeah.
And like, people would look at him and he'd be like tied to the trailer, and they'd just be staring at him, like trying to figure out what was wrong with him. And I'd be like, I know, he's really long. Like, he is really long, isn't he? I'm like, yeah, I know.
He probably could have sold him to a circus or something, and they could have put a double seat saddle on him.
Oh, I know. Well,
Like
Gabe's mom has one of those. Yeah, Gabe's mom has one of those double seat saddles, and she's always trying to get us to take it. So I was like, maybe we should just go get that and post him on Facebook for sale.
Yeah. That's like a novelty item.
Yeah, that's like around here. You can see like there'll be some horse with like 4 Amish kids on it, and they're riding around, and it's like, the 10th day in a row that horse has had to work, and so he's just like, whatever, dude.
Yeah. We have a lot of Amish here. We have a ton of Amish right here where we live, actually. There's an Amish colony not that far from here, and we deal a lot with them, actually. And Gabe and I went and did a clinic for him a few years ago up there, and there was like 40 Amish people showed up for the clinic, like, to ride. And we thought it was just going to be, because a friend of ours that lives up there that we've done a little horse dealing with, his name's Amos Yoder. He told us to come up there. I know, weird, huh? But they have a community phone up there, and it's just one phone, like a phone booth, like on the side of the county road. And so he calls us and he was like, hey, will you guys come up and do a clinic for us up here? Just a few guys, and, and we'll just, and it's not that far from our house here. And we were like, oh yeah, sure. So we went up there, and there was like 40 participants. We were like, oh my gosh, this is like a big clinic.
That's awesome.
It's like, yeah, everyone wanted to, like, perfect. And they were great. Like, it was fun. It was a good group of guys, and and kids too, and they're really into it, and they really wanted to learn, and they were really dedicated. And, now every time we see them, as far as like, they'll go to the Billings horse sale, and that's how a lot of those guys up here make their living, is just riding and selling horses. And so we'll see them when we go to Billings, and they corner us every time, and we end up helping them for like an hour with different things. They'll be like, how do you do this?
That's great. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they don't have the Buck channel, right? They have you at the Billings horse sale, so they got to capitalize on that.
They do, and they will corner you.
Good. Those weren't the folks that camped out at the Colt starting, were they?
No, those guys are from
year?
back
Do you remember
somewhere.
that?
Yeah, they're from back east somewhere.
Okay. So then I'm pretty sure I met those folks. Well, I know I met those folks a couple years ago at one of your dad's clinics in Wisconsin.
Yep.
And I'm pretty sure they're from that area and drove all the way from Wisconsin. But that Wisconsin clinic had a it was my first time in Wisconsin, so I didn't know what to expect, like being kind of out of my element. And we got there, and there was like a third of the people were Amish, and I was like, holy cow, because Midwest, I know, has a big Amish community. And yeah, they were all over it. And then they were like walking through the barns, and I guess like anyone they watched that they thought were kind of like doing okay in the clinic, they'd like stop them and they were very polite, so I don't want to say corner, but
Yeah.
they bend your ear for a while and be like, and what do you do? And why are you doing this? And what's the story on this horse? And they just like every person down the whole barn, they stopped them and did that with.
Yep.
And it was cool to see. And then they drove all the way to freaking Sheridan and camped in tents in a downpour.
Yeah. And it's so cool seeing that. Like, I love seeing that because, I mean, in the clinic thing, like Dad deals with it so much. I know people are like, why don't you do a clinic here so that I don't have to drive so far? It's like, you can't do a clinic everywhere, but it's so cool seeing that, like, people traveling that far for something that they truly want, and that knowledge that they are after. And that's like when Gabe and I went to Argentina a few years ago and did that clinic over in Patagonia. There was gauchos coming out of the hills and they rode like 45 miles to come watch us. Like, they just show up and then they camp out. I mean, like, but that dedication, like, they heard about it and they're like, I want to go see this. I want to go learn. And then to just be like, I'm going to ride 45 miles to go watch this for 2 days and then ride home, and then it again happened when we were in Italy this year. We went to Italy and Spain with Dad. There was a guy that I can't remember. He's from some island in the like Mediterranean. He had never ridden a horse before. And he bought a saddle, leased a horse, and came to ride in Dad's clinic in Italy. And that was his first time ever on a horse. And he's been studying that. He's been doing, his dad raises race horses, and they have like, that's what they do, is race horses. I can't remember where he was from. It was some really like obscure place. But he was the nicest guy. And he was like, I've been studying your dad's stuff for 10 years and my dad won't let me ride any of the race horses. And that's all we have on the island. And so I do groundwork with all of them, but I've never been on a horse before. And he flew to Italy, leased this horse, and it was kind of funny because there was a few people that were kind of being a little snooty towards him. And I was like, you come here, I'll help you. And I'm like showing him like saddle his horse. I'm like, here's how you do this. And I'm like cinching his horse up and he's like, are my stirrups okay? Like, and he has no idea how to bridle a horse, like no idea. And he's like on this brand new saddle that he just bought. And I'm like, okay, let's get this situated here. So I'm like helping him get everything put together. And there's a bunch of people that are kind of looking at him like, kind of snooty and like, what is this guy doing? And I'm like, okay, no, when you go out there, like, if you want to go that way, go this way. And if you want to go that way, go this way. And he's like, okay, I think I got it. And, and he rides out there and he was just like, he was just grinning ear to ear. And he's like, it was funny because the horse he leased wasn't super duper soft or anything. He's kind of a dude horse. And so he'd like go, and he knew what he was looking for though. That was the cool thing, is he'd studied enough. Like, he knew what he was after, but he just didn't know how it felt or how to execute it. And so he'd be like, okay, I'm trying to get a soft feel. And he'd go to pick up on this horse. And this horse was just like stick his nose out, and not do anything. And he was like, I don't think he's getting it. I'm like, no, he's not at all. And he's trying his darndest to get it done. And he's like, he has good intention and he knows exactly what he's after, but he's like, I don't think it's working. And so I told Dad, Dad had no idea. So at first Dad was like, what is this guy doing over here? So I take Dad's coffee up and I'm like, hey Dad, this is this guy's first time ever on a horse. And he was like, what? And I was like, yeah, first day right now. He's first time on one. So be nice. He's like, all right. So then after that, Dad was like, oh, you're doing good. You're doing great. Like, just try this. And it was so cool though. And like the thought of that, like that guy traveled, I mean, a long ways, and he went through a lot of effort to get there, just to ride with Dad, just to have, and he said, if I'm going to start riding, I want it to be with the best. And he was spot on with it as far as, and he's like doing everything he can to get into the next clinic. And he's like, even if I only get to ride once every couple of years, that's going to be the best opportunity I have. So like anytime anyone's like, oh, the clinic was a little too far away, I just think of that and I just shake my head.
Well, kudos to that guy for pulling that off, because that's another example of how blessed we are to live in America. Like my wife and I just had our honeymoon a couple months ago and we were in Florence and her uncle lives there. And I was talking to him, and we were talking about differences in our countries. And he said one of the stark differences about living there in Europe, and especially where they are in Florence, is that you don't have a lot of room. So the culture breeds people that have a really hard time like exploring and trying new things and being willing to fail until they succeed. And he said,
Mhm.
the Americans were so used to that. We have tons of room. If you want to learn to play guitar, you can learn to play guitar. No one's going to hear you suck for,
Mhm.
a year. And you want to, ride a dirt bike, you can ride in a big field and crash 100 times. Horses, same thing. You can buy a few, you can wreck a few, right? You can
Mhm.
try 10 different saddles. You can find different clinicians. You can do all this stuff till you start to succeed. But in Europe, it's so bred into people to not even try because you don't
Mhm.
have that much room and
Yeah.
everyone's watching you. And it's very difficult. So that's really cool that that guy did that and made
Mhm.
all the effort to go
Yeah.
through that. And you're right, because it's
Yeah.
so amazing, the opportunities that we have here. And it's
Yeah.
considerably easy to get a horse here in America and find a
Mhm.
saddle and go ride with your dad. Like, it's not
Right.
rocket science. Where if I was in
No.
Europe, I wouldn't know what to do with myself. I probably wouldn't ride horses if I lived in Europe. It would
Mhm.
just be a far off dream. It'd be way too difficult.
Yep. Exactly. We don't realize how lucky we are. And that's like, I mean, getting to live where we live here. I mean, we're on 80,000 acres and our closest neighbors are 20 miles away pretty much. And it's not, there's no one here. It's just us, just us and our horses. And, we kind of, every time we think about having to go to town, we're like, well, later in the week, maybe, and that's just, it's such a cool way to get to live. And we're lucky, and just having that and but also the option to be able to go to town if we need to, that's something too. Like living out here, it's you learn to appreciate that, to where when you do get to go somewhere, you're like, all right, let's go make the most of it.
Yeah. Probably makes you more intentional about your trips, though, huh?
Oh yeah. Yep. 60 miles is a long ways to town. Yeah, one way. So, but there has been weeks where I've had to go to town like every day to pick up supplies and things. And by the end of it, I'm like, I'm never going to town again. I'm never going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I bet. So a little while ago, you were talking about the OW, and you were saying you guys did that horse sale when you were fixing things up and had the interns or employees come. But then you said you've made a bit of a direction change with the ranch. What is that direction change?
Well, the ranch is on the market. So the owner who we work for he's great. He's great to work for. We love working for him. We love being here. But we kind of just decided that, as much as we do love working here, it just really wasn't in our best interest to continue to market a brand for the OW, as far as like, we just don't want it to be like, we're putting all of our work into promoting the OW and developing a brand for that, and then have it sell to somebody that has zero interest in that. And then we maybe move somewhere, or, it's just, there was a lot of different ways that it could go. And it was like, well, it's not really in our best interest to promote the OW brand as much as it is to promote our own personal brand. And so that's where the marketing kind of came out. And it's like, we still definitely promote the OW, and like a lot of the social media stuff we still do. But just as far as like a horse sale and doing all that, we just didn't really need to do that as much as, and we didn't need the help as much. Like our corral system that we had to build that first year was pretty intense, and there was a lot of work that needed done on this place. And so that's where we needed the skilled labor to come help us. And that's how the horses paid for that. And we could do that now, but it just would be an added entity that we don't really need. We kind of are on a skeleton crew right now, and it's a perfect crew. Like it's great. We don't have that many employees here. It's we have a full-time water guy that all he does is fix water tanks, which doesn't seem like that big of a job, but it is. He's the most important guy on
Oh
this
no,
whole
that's
place.
nice.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then
I mean, 80,000 acres worth of water tanks. That's a lot to
it
see
is.
over.
It is.
Yeah.
It's a lot. And
Yeah.
so, and before we were doing all of it. So, I mean, you can see it was hard because we didn't get to ride as much because we were worrying about all that other stuff. And so now having somebody that doesn't want to ride and all he wants to do is just, his family's here and everything. So that really helps us out. And then, we've got like Flooring, an adopted older daughter. It's been so fun having her here because the kids love it. It's good for our kids to have somebody here that they can look up to and ride with and stuff. And it's not their parents. So it's that's been really cool. And it's been good for Flora to, experience some outside time, outside riding and roping and doctoring stuff outside. And, Gabe goes about 300 miles an hour wherever he goes. So it's been good for Flora to combine the horsemanship with the speed and the, being intentional with what you're doing. And it's been really cool to see her develop and change some things in her program. And she sold a horse at Art of the Cowgirl too with us, and her horse sold really, really well. So that was neat to see. And then we've got like Jeremy Schwartz, who he's been with us since that first year when we had all the interns, and he was in college at Cal Poly. And so he came for the summer, worked, and then went back to school for a year, graduated, and then came back to work. And he's been here for like 2.5 years now. So that's pretty cool. And we've got a really great kid from the Midwest, actually. He's from Minnesota, and he just started working for us, and he's super great mechanic, and that's valuable out here also. And he's helps us ride and do all the stuff with cattle too. And so we've got a really quality crew that has helped, it helps. And Jamie and McGinn, they live over at the river. And so we've got, and everybody, it's cool because everybody's involved in the horsemanship stuff. Everybody that we have here that rides, they want to improve themselves. So it makes it even more fun to where you're not riding with people that you're like, oh man, I can't stand watching that person ride. It's like, no, everybody here is trying to better themselves, and they're on the same path as far as we all go down and we all ride with Dad in the winter. We go down to the indoor arena and all get to start colts with him and ride. And that's been super great. And just, we have a perfect crew right now, and it makes it easy to push everybody to the best that they can be.
Yeah. Man, that's really great. So the OW is a pretty special place though, right? Like I've seen old photos of you as a little kid, like riding on the saddle with your dad out there at Brandings and stuff. Can you talk a little bit about, I don't know anything about the OW besides like a little snippets or who owns it and stuff like that, but just kind of the history and how you've been involved with it or your family over the years?
Yeah. So when I was, so my dad he's been coming out here since I was like 4 years old. And he's come out here and, branded calves and just helped Jim with a lot of different stuff. And so I've been coming out here since then pretty much. And I remember being really little and driving out here and thinking like we were driving so far, like it was the longest way. And now it's so funny to think about because it's like, I do that drive multiple times a week, but they're, it's cool because I do have so many memories growing up, just in the old buildings and stuff and the corrals and the barn and everything, just, and it's just little snippet memories from when you're, like 4, 5, 6 years old. But when we first came out here, when Jim hired us, it was like, man, it's crazy how things go full circle, and Jim's a really great family friend of ours. So he was really grateful to get us out here and, being able to be really intentional with what we feel needs improved on, and just like taking care of all these old structures and old buildings and everything, and really putting our heart into it and trying to make it better. It's been really cool to get to experience that. And I hope that whoever buys it, I hope they appreciate that too. Cause it's been a labor of love, and we've been lucky having the place to ride our horses. That's the big thing too, is that doing our job out here and managing the cattle and everything, our calves are all natural, and we have to go through all the certification and everything. So I handle all the paperwork for all that and do, it's a lot getting audited and doing all that stuff. That's a big deal, but trying to keep all that on track as well as trying to keep the ranch, historic and keep it to where nothing changes as far as like, I love when people show up and they're like, wow, everything's the exact same as it was in the 1800s. It's like, yep, that's exactly right. It is. Everything's the exact same.
Mm.
And like now, like during the summer, we cook in the cookhouse and we do everything down at the bunkhouse and cookhouse, but I cook for the crew. So we cook like right now in the winter, we cook in our house here, and I just cook everything here for them and do that. And then it's a little easier since we have a dishwasher. So
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes it nice.
yeah.
Do you guys deal with IMI Global for cattle?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Or another company?
Nope, IMI.
Yeah, that can be a pain
And
in the
then
butt. Yeah.
Oh man, it is. And then we do we are GAP certified. So I have to go through the whole other deal too with the, whatever it is, earth claims. So I spend a lot of time sitting in the office doing all that stuff.
You make ranch life sound so romantic, Reata.
That's great.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how you have time for all of that. And you put on some events too. Are you involved at all with the Art of the Cowgirl, or you're just friends with them?
I'm just friends with Mesa, and we just help. Like Gabe he helps with the cattle and like helps them run the cattle around and stuff. So he does all that, and I help Mesa if she needs stuff, but not really involved too much except for that.
Okay.
Yeah,
but
I do. I have a hard time saying
the Pro-Am, right? Gosh. Yeah, I don't know how you do all that stuff. Do you like planning events? What's the most difficult part of planning one of those big events?
Oh gosh. Well, I'm really lucky because so my best friend, Jamie, she and her significant other live here on the ranch too. And they work at the other end. And so Jamie helps me with a lot of this stuff as far as like the Pro-Am and everything. She's not my secretary, but I wish she would be because she's very on top of that stuff. And she helps me with all of it pretty much. But I don't know. I have a hard time saying no to putting things on and doing things. Like it's a serious problem. I always have way too many irons in the fire, and I'm always like, okay, now I have to think about this. And so like right now I'm working on like the June clinic, and my brain is just like about to explode trying to figure everything out. And then I also Pro-Am entries are opening on whatever tomorrow or whatever the 15th is. So like trying to get all these different things, like I really have to like sit down and like have it on paper in front of me and be like, okay, this is what I'm doing today. And then it's hard too, because then I'm like, I'm just going to go ride instead. So then I just leave and don't do any of the things I'm supposed to. But it's a tough deal. I do enjoy putting events on. It's a labor of love. I'm always like, we should do this. And then I get going on it. And then I'm like, why did I do that? Like, that was not necessary. I did not need that added stress level in my life, but here we are. So now we're going to do it. But Jamie's always my voice of reason on those things. And she's always like, are you sure you want to do that? And I'm like, yeah, it'll be fine. And she's like, oh, I don't know. And it's the Pro-Am. It's pretty easy to put that on now. We kind of got it on lockdown, but like, that's all Dad's like doing the Pro-Am, because the first year when they started doing that, it was, I don't remember. I think it was like July maybe. And the roping was in October, and Dad he was like promoting this roping that he was putting on. And in typical Dad fashion, had nothing planned for it at all. And I was like, so what about this? And he's like, I don't know. And I'm like, what about this? I don't know. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Dad, you can't do that. And so finally, then Bill and him brought me in, and I helped them get going with it, and it worked out fine. And then they just slowly were like, here you go. You do the rest of it. And here we are 10 years later, and that's where we're at. And the same thing with the Colt clinic. That started out, it was pretty small, and Dad just wanted to do a Colt clinic at home. And I was like, oh, I'll sponsor it. And my mom is my mom's a pretty private person, as far as like, she doesn't like a ton of people come into her house and everything like that. Like, she's not really into that. And so the first year she was like, make sure you don't have too many colts. Don't sign up a ton of people, like keep it limited. And I was like, okay, I will. And so I'd like start signing more people up. Mom was like, no more. So I was like, okay, fine. So I cut it off, and we had the clinic, and Dad was like, Reata, you didn't even fill the clinic. Why didn't you fill the clinic? And I was like, because your wife didn't want me to. And he's like, no, we should have filled the clinic. And I was like, well, you talk to Mom about that. And he told me, I will never forget it. he told me I was the worst clinic sponsor of the year that year. And I was like, Dad, I was so mad at him about it. And I was like, this is so hard being stuck between you two. So the next year I was like, all right, I'm going to show you. So I booked I think we had 50 colts in the clinic the next year. And
Holy cow.
It was a lot. And we had a lot of spectators, and my mom was so mad at me. And she was like, Reata, that's way too many horses. There's way too many horses for this place. And Dad was ecstatic. Dad was like, that's great. That was the best clinic of the year. I was like, I can't make either of you happy. So I'm just going to have to go with it.
That's funny. That was probably one of my favorite things about the Colt starting last year was finally getting to meet your mom in person. And just the ebb and flow your parents have is just the most, it just makes me smile every time. I love everything about it. And even my fiance, who had met Buck a couple of times, she was like, well, yeah, I've met Buck and you've ridden in his clinics and Buck's cool. Buck's a cool guy, but I really like Mary. I'm a big Mary fan.
Most everybody is.
Yeah.
My mom's a pretty special person. She definitely keeps my dad grounded. I know sometimes he thinks that she's unreasonable in certain things, but it's a good thing she's there to keep him grounded.
Right. Yeah, that's always important.
Yeah.
So as we kind of get to the end of this, I know you said there's potentially maybe a few things in flux. You're talking about the ranch being on the market and everything. And obviously, you've got your kids and your budding family and all that. But in terms of, say, example, the Clark horses and the other stuff you guys have going on and all your irons in the fire, I'd be curious, what do you see, 5, 10, 20 years out? Do you have in terms of maybe your horse program or your breeding program, or again, I realize the ranch is on the market, but what do you kind of have in terms of goals for the future right now?
Well, Gabe and I are always, we're both doers. We're both movers as far as we always have things going and, new things happening. And I think that our main focus is just our horse deal as far as selling horses, continuing to make horses and sell them. Our selling prospects and stuff, that's really, in the last couple of years, we've done really well with that. And like I said, we haven't had to advertise at all. I haven't posted anything about selling colts on social media because we've sold them all before I've even had to. And that's worked out really great. And it's cool too, because a lot of those horses are, they're all related to Dad's horses that he's got on the road. As you know, Ben, that filly that's there at Bill's. We're really happy with the product that we're putting out there as far as our colts go. And Dad is too, which is neat because then he can stand behind it and be like, no, they're making some really nice colts. And we're not mass producing them either. We're only, top we'll have 8 colts a year. And so anything that we do sell, we're pretty proud of. And that's something that I think we'll just continue on with. And, depending if we're here or wherever we are, we can continue to do that because all of our brood mares and our studs and everything we keep down at my mom and dad's place. So everything's down there, and we go down and help them with stuff every week. So we're kind of on 2 places as far as down at mom and dad's place and up here. So we already have that balance. So depending on the ranch, that's kind of that. It honestly doesn't affect us too much as far as it's just where we're going to continue to do our business. And that's, selling horses and stuff. It's definitely, it's like I said, it's a really inconsistent business to be in because, we're trying to put a lot of time into the horses that we're selling. It's not just get them, put 2 weeks on them and sell them, and there's some horses you can get that are really nice and gentle and got a lot going for them, and you can do that. But for the most part, we try to put a lot of time into the horses that we're selling. And, I just sold a gelding that most people know, that big Gypsy Vanner horse that I had, Julio. And I sold him, and he was Instagram famous. Everybody loved him. But I sold him, and
Yeah.
he, that was a big, and I sold him for, for quite a lot, but I also put like 6 years into him. It wasn't
Right.
it wasn't just like a, oh, I'm just going to ride him for 6 months and then sell him. It was, I put a lot of time into that horse. And so realistically, you figure, well, we just did it actually. So Hattie at Art of the Cowgirl sold her pony for 80,000. I'm sure everybody saw that, which was so cool. Like that for a Welsh pony, like that's insane. But she rode that horse for 5 years. She rode him for 5 years. Mm-hmm. And if you break that down into a monthly paycheck, she got paid $1,300 a month to ride that horse. Yeah. So, then you consider in the cost of buying the horse, that's really not that much. It's crazy to think about that, but break it down, it's not that much money. And I know it is a lot. It is a lot, but you break it down into those figures and your time that you're putting into those horses, that's why you don't make money in the horse world.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that, because I think a lot of people, they would see a situation like that and the naysayers say, oh, it must be nice, Oh, you break it down like that. It brings people back to the reality. Like, yeah, it is nice. It's a wonderful way of life, but it's not, it's not like some other person's way more privileged than you.
Right.
That's true.
And
it's a lot of work.
It is. And that's, and the cool thing too, is that like the gal that bought that pony, she rides with Dad, and she's going to continue to educate and, ride that horse and use him in the clinics. And that's so cool that somebody with that appreciation got him, and that truly appreciated the work that Hattie put into that horse. And, even so, like, no slouch, Hattie or Paisley and Jack, they sold their horses for a lot of money too. Paisley sold her mare for $28,000, and Jack sold his pony with 20 rides for $12,500, which is a lot for a pony. That, then that's their work. They did the work on those horses. That's not us. We helped them, but that's their money. That's their horses. It's so cool for kids that age to get to see that, and like Jack was, they were bawling at the sale, which we didn't force them to sell their horses, but they wanted to, and they understand it, and they get it, and they see what it takes to make a living and to do what we do. And, and they're all in it, which is so cool that and that motivates them too, to do better. And they're like, all right, on the next one, I'm going to do this way better, and the girls are always, it's funny because Jack is just like Gabe. And so he just goes Mach 1 all the time, everywhere, and just doesn't care. And he'll go crawl on a horse and just go. And the girls are always like, Jack, you did not do enough groundwork. You didn't do your groundwork. And they're yelling at him. And he's like, I'll do it later. And off they go.
There you go.
Oh, it's so funny. When like we ride with Dad all winter. And Dad just gets a hoot out. He just laughs so hard because Jack will be in there doing stuff and he'll fall off his pony. And Dad's like, oh, you probably should have done some groundwork, Jack. And he's like, yeah, I know. Then he gets back on and off he goes again. And the girls are like, we told him, Buck. We told him to do his groundwork.
God.
Dad just loves it. It's pretty cool.
That's great.
That's hilarious. Oh, and just for the record, yeah, that filly that you guys sold Bill, I think, hands down, that's one of his best horses on the property. She's beautiful. Cool. So
yeah. Her mom's got another one cooking right now, same cross. So I'm excited to see what we get again out of it. I wonder if she's going to be as big as Beef, because Beef is just ginormous.
He's huge.
Yeah,
I've got well, they're not mine. My fiance owns warm bloods that are like just marginally bigger than Beef.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a monster of a quarter horse.
Yeah, and he's only 4. That's the crazy thing. And that's like that filly, she was next to all of our other 2-year-olds. I was just like, oh my gosh, you are huge. She was huge next to them. Yeah. But she was an angel though, like the halter break and everything, like, because we didn't do a ton with her. But like when I loaded her on the trailer to send her your guys' way, she was like, hopped right in and was like, where are we going? Let's go. I'm just happy as could be. I was like, perfect. And, wrapping her leg and stuff. I felt bad sending her with that, but I was like, I don't want her to sit here in a blizzard, Bill, and then have to send her down there to you when she's got 6 inches of winter coat. But she was like, when I doctored her, when I had her, she was an angel to doctor, and I hadn't roped her feet or done anything with her. And she was just like, here you go.
Yeah. No, she did great. I mean, she was easy to handle. And even that leg, I mean, ran your hand down her leg a few times and then you could wrap it and unwrap it and all that. And really, really sweet minded little pony.
Yeah. That's what we're, a lot of the colts that we're raising they're along those lines. And, we've got a lot of different, like some that are related to Shooter and some that are related to Boozy and just lots of different crosses. It's cool to see. It's cool to see Dad taking them on the road and then being able to produce more of them.
Yeah. Well, you guys have a good front, man, for selling those ones at least.
Yeah. Except sometimes there's some interesting ones that come out of the woodwork sometimes to get those.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, Reata, thanks so much for taking time out of your day. I'm sure you have stuff that you're going to go on and do today, so we won't hold you up too much longer, but thanks so much. This has been a lot of fun and just hearing about your story and ranch and the kids. And like I said, it's really fun to follow along, and it's impressive to see those kids and all the stuff you guys do. It's a really good example. Like you read stuff. I don't know if you're familiar with Abigail Schreier, but like different people, her in particular, you'll read their books about, good ways to raise kids and different kinds of, psychological methods that are good or bad for kids. But it's really cool to just see kids in the wild that have that life. And it's a great example. Everyone can write the books, but it's something else when people are putting that into practice with their kids and with their life and promoting that. And it's really special. And it's something to be, lifted up and celebrated. So
yeah, for sure.
Thanks for your time anyway.
We're working on something with John Stewart kind of along those lines. So keep your ears open.
Sweet. Keep our antennas up.
Yep.
Yeah, that'd be great. Awesome. Thanks. Well, we're going to stop recording, but don't hang up.
Okay. Sounds good.